Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is meaning. Human beings are meaning-making machines. So now we get to take a look at the contexts in which we make meaning and what might be available for us as we move into higher awareness and a deeper connection with our foundation consciousness. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get settled in. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing every cell, every organ, filling it with life and bright, vital energy. And as you exhale any tension, any toxins, any negativity, and let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine sparkling white light brightening every molecule, every electron, electrifying and energizing you. And as you exhale any remaining negativity, tension, stress, toxins. And now let's just gently press our palms together really softly. And softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms and just allow yourself to really sink into the deliciousness of that sensation and the miracle of it, actually, to be able to feel these feelings, these sensations. It's really amazing. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Kim. Great to have you back. And good morning, Tina. Welcome, welcome. So we're talking about meaning and being meaning-making machines. And it's interesting. I had a conversation with a client yesterday that was really, really profound. And so many of us are on a path of awakening. And we imagine that on this path of awakening, that it will be blissful. And it may be, but on the way there, I think there are many thorns and brambles that we get to navigate on our way there. And some of those thorns and brambles have to do with who we are and our identities. And so much of our identity is tied up in meaning and making a difference. So many of us as healer people and people on a path of awakening, we all want to make a difference. And so when we look at the context of that conversation, the context of making a difference, it's obviously in the human space, right? And it is validating that this human existence is our essential nature. And so this might get super, super woo-woo for some people, but I want to engage in it with you. I hope you'll engage in it with me, because it's a really interesting thing to look at. And I just sort of felt new sparks of awareness coming out of this conversation that I had yesterday that I'm hoping to generate further insight into for myself and also to share with you. So if we know, if we believe, if we allow ourselves to entertain the thought that we are spirit in physical form, the context of meaning is radically shifted from when we look at our lives in the context of being human. And so looking at our lives in the context of being human, we can do things to make a difference, right? We can help other people. We can be kind. We can be loving. We can be generous. We can also be on the other side of that. We can be destructive and angry and mean and um, un, ungenerous. And yes, Rosalind, you got it. So Rosalind says, what is the meaning of life? If I'm not going to have kids, what's my purpose in life? I've closed the door on kids of my own, and it has lifted the pressure to find someone to build a life together with. I did the same thing, Rosalind. And we get to talk about the meaning of life. So, and how we create meaning for ourselves. Um, I, I, Tina says, I just buy food for a homeless person, um, bananas and juice. He is the same loving person. I think what you're saying. So this is really interesting, Tina, because you sort of foreshadowed where this conversation is going. So what was happening in this conversation with my client yesterday was that they were experiencing a revelation, like looking at themselves in the mirror and not really recognizing who that person was. And we got to talk about as we evolve into a state of greater consciousness, and I mean more expanded consciousness, we become less and less attached to the things that make us human. And the things that make us human in so many ways, I think, are our identities that we connect to, our relationships, the meaning and purpose that we've created, the things that we do, the things that we have, our beliefs about how the universe works. These are all things that we attach ourselves to and that we anchor our consciousness on. And um, it was so interesting. Unfortunately, at this moment, this was a very disturbing and upsetting experience for this person in this moment, because it's a transition of sort of letting go of our identity, letting go of our everything that we think we know to be true. And this person, very remarkably, how has created a more expansive identity for themselves beyond human, like to be connected in to the energy of the universe. So in the transition, in the consciousness awareness transition from this identity as a human being and as this physical form that we see when we see ourselves in the mirror, or as the um, as the being that interacts with all these things around us, um, as we dissociate from that, or as we realize that that's not who we are in essence. Kim, you got it. So Kim says, I love this conversation. It's disconnecting to become more connected. Exactly. So and the meaning, to go back to meaning making machines, the meaning that we attribute to things is a way for us to stay anchored in this realm of human experience. I'm not going to even say illusion, although, in some respects, perhaps it's an illusion. But what this person is reading, I think it's A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, who's talking about, letting go of all these identities and all of this meaning that we make. Really, ultimately, that's what that book is about. So the question become so I'm sorry, there's so many thoughts and they're rumbling around, so I'm trying to make sense of them and talk about them in a coherent way, which is a little challenging, but we'll get there. So this person had this revelation. There's a homeless person that sleeps right near where they live, and um, they bought some food for Christmas and gave that food to this homeless person. And the revelation that they had, which was really disruptive, was I'm no different. Like what I'm doing doesn't make any more difference or any less difference than what that person is doing. That what's the difference in our lives? You know, we're still having the same human experience in terms of being in the physical. It's like this race for acquisition, this race for bettering ourselves, making more of a difference, you know, making a difference, all of this. If we see ourselves from the space of spirit or the space of consciousness, manifest and animating our physical form, then what more is there than experience? And also recognizing that we are not that experience, that we are the consciousness animating that form. So tell me if this is getting too esoteric, but what ended up wrapped into this conversation was also the conversation about being versus doing. And in this moment of revelation, there was the recognition that the doingness doesn't matter, it doesn't make a difference. Ultimately, I mean, it may make a difference in the context of our individual lives, in our lives with our families, in our lives with our friends, and the relationships that we have, and the way that we interact with other peoples and other countries, and with nature, even more importantly. um, but but if it's all about presencing spirit, what is the essence of that? And this goes back to what you said, Kim, is disconnecting to become more connected. So as we disconnect from these individualized, thank you for not too woo woo. I mean, I'm all about woo woo, but hey, this is philosophical, I think, but it's really an intense conversation. Um, what's left as we expand into this presence, as we release ourselves from all these different attachments to what I look like, who I believe myself to be, we go through a place of I don't know who I am and or what I am. And ultimately we get to this place of presence that is just love, and there's no doingness about it. There's just pure being, and it's a matter of shifting our context to recognize that the doing is in certain context, and if we're seeing ourselves as spirit animating this physical form, then all there is presence, and that is love. It is life itself, it is consciousness itself. And so Tina says we're all together here. Yes, in the earth and the fire. That's a really good way to put it, actually. In the earth and in the fire. So the fire being maybe the flame of spirit. So the thing that when we recognize this, like when we go from this place of attachment to all our ideas and our presence and I mean, our idea of who we are, and our physicality and all of that, when we go beyond that and recognize ourselves to be more than that, then we can come back to a place of recognizing that whatever we do in life, in some context, in this grander context, doesn't have any particular meaning. That it's not about meaning. It's not about the doingness. It's not about the recognition. It's not about the approval. It's not about any of those things. It's not about what we acquire. So what is it about? It's about the experience of being. And when we recognize that there's no place to go, there's no place we have to get to. We don't win the game by, as so many in our culture believe, by collecting the most toys or the most possessions. We don't win the game by being Mother Teresa or Gandhi. We don't win the game. We don't lose the game. And this is really, really incendiary. We don't lose the game by being Hitler. That on some scale, all of that human interplay is like this remarkable drama, like remarkable theater, and we all get to be part of it in whatever capacity we play, the roles we play. And so if that's true, it gives us the opportunity to make choices, and it gives us the freedom to be fully expressed, to really move into life inspired by the calling of our heart, which has been a constant conversation here. And so Conscious Question says all the world is a stage. Exactly. And when we recognize that, like if we recognize that we're all playing roles, then maybe we can give ourselves the freedom to try on a different role, and the freedom to play with our experience here while we're here, to broaden our experience. I for most of my life I was just tortured by, like, what is the purpose of this? Why are we here? What is going on? And ultimately I found comfort in this idea that we are consciousness here to broaden itself through experience. And if that's the case, and I'm not saying it is, I'm saying that's my hypothesis, but if that's the case, then everything I experience in my life is expanding and contributing to this broader consciousness that is experiencing everything from the highest highs to the lowest lows, to the darkest evil to the greatest good. That this is all part of consciousness experiencing and expanding itself. And from that vantage point, then I don't have the shoulds anymore in my life. And Irma says, for me, the meaning is the love I put in all. And that's what we were saying, is that ultimately it comes down to presence. And so it comes down to, like, the essential life force and consciousness that animates all of it, that is fundamentally is love, right? And so I'm right there with you, Irma. Ultimately, it's love, or and maybe just expansion and acceptance, expanding into this vast everything. And so Kim says, I think it makes life more fun and interesting. It's a relief. I think it makes life more fun and interesting too, because then we get to play with, like, really have the freedom to play with the things that light us up. And let's see. Tina says, yoga helps me to feel my body, grounding in nature, happy body, all in 5D. Um, to look at my life and people around me, family and friends. Yeah, so here we get to create, we do, well, whether we recognize it or not, we create the meaning that we have in our lives. Years ago, I took a training that at the time when I first took it was called EST. And then it evolved into Landmark Education and the Forum. And at the end of the 3 days, spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you what they told us then. I don't know what they tell us now. At the end of these very intense 3 days of confrontation and looking at ourselves through very different lenses and looking at all the um, the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are in our lives. And I'm using the word story to say that we make it up. We make up all these identities that we are. And so at the end of the 3 days, they said, okay, so here is what you've been waiting for. Life is empty and meaningless. And I had a hissy fit for myself. I was like, are you kidding me? What do you mean it's empty and meaningless? I didn't speak this out loud. I just was livid inside. What do you mean life is empty and meaningless? And now, let's see, about, wow, over 30 years later, now I am really coming into the experience of the expansiveness of that conversation, and and the freedom and the truth of it, because we get to craft this experience for ourselves, not because it's meaningful or meaningless. We get to create it as this wonderful unfolding uh, game. Maybe you could call it a game, you could call it theater, you could call it story, you could call it drama, you could call it whatever. um, I choose to make a game that I think will be fun out of it. And so um, sometimes the way I play that game, it looks really serious. And sometimes the way I play that game is just filled with lightness and vitality. And ultimately, if I suffer or I'm joyful, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't ultimately mean anything. And if I make a goal and don't achieve it, it doesn't mean anything. We can make meaning about it. We do make meaning about it. We make it mean that I'm not good enough, um, or something's wrong with me, or I'm a good person, or any number of things. We make these things mean things. So what if we're spirit pretending to have a human experience? What if all there is love? What if all the doingness doesn't really matter? It's like this frenzied production. Maybe we can relieve ourselves of some of the frenzy and just enjoy it more. And even all the feelings, because imagine if you're spirit You don't have a way to experience the senses. You don't have a way to see and feel and taste and smell um, and intuit, and you don't have a vehicle to react from, right, as spirit. So this physical form, even with all the suffering and the tragedy and the triumph, and it's all sensation, it's all experience, it's all spectacularly fun and expansive, because it's all about expanding and expanding, and just like this complete consciousness expanding into its fullest expression. So Dido says, so interesting. I did Landmark too and had the same experience around life is empty and meaningless at the time. That was 25 years ago. And now I believe all there is love. So Dido, I think you and I, well, I think I did Landmark probably over 30 years ago, but I'm not sure. But yeah, and I agree with you. All there is love, and all of this is an expression of different ways that we get to play out this life force and animate it in the universe. And so I wonder, freeing ourselves from meaning and freeing ourselves from all these attachments to the meaning that we make, you know, um, on all levels. As we free ourselves more from that, what happens? We become actually more expanded. And as we become more expanded, as Kim said, I think it was Kim, yes, it was, who said, as we expand more, we become more connected, because that homeless person is me. It is, I am consciousness, and that homeless person is me. And the person, or the what I see in the mirror, becomes less me, and it becomes something that is a vehicle through which I express. And yeah, so interesting and challenging stuff to talk about, yes, because it really does challenge our sense of ourselves and the way that we anchor ourselves in this experience. And what's coming to mind right now for me, interestingly, is years ago I had the wonderful opportunity to spend some time at the Monroe Institute. And that's Robert Monroe Institute. I think it's in Virginia or West Virginia. I'm not sure. I've forgotten. But anyway, these guys were accessing different dimensions of consciousness and awareness, and there was a fellow there named Joe McMoneagle, and Joe had a death experience, and after, when he came back, he had a lot more conscious awareness, and he was part of I think it was a CIA thing, that was the shaman spies. You could find out more about it, but these folks did something called remote viewing. And the thing with remote viewing was that these people were trained and able to, and gifted to, be able to project their awareness to remote locations. And they actually discovered that they were able to project their awareness to remote locations regardless of time or space. I mean, they went to other planets. They went to the resurrection, they went to the Kennedy assassination, you know, they could go wherever they wanted to, and they would be able to bring back some information that was pretty cogent. And at the time, I really, really wanted to study and become a remote viewer. And Joe said he used to train people in it, but then he gave it up because people either would quit or go crazy. And I can understand why they would go crazy without a foundation, a spiritual foundation, because what was stripped away was every notion that they had of being human, like their physical form. These people were able to see their own deaths. And so if it without a spiritual foundation, how can you be so detached from, like, if I'm able to travel through time and I'm able to travel through space and I can see my own death, what am I? That's like a Zen koan, right? Or some kind of wonderful one kind of riddle. Yes, exactly. So conscious question says ego dissolved. Yes. So really, really interesting. And then the thing that becomes even more interesting is how, from that state, do you function in the human world, because it's so crazy, right? And you recognize that it's not the way it seems, you know, that all these things that people are fighting over and killing each other for, it's there's and the ways that people treat each other, that it's all kind of pretty craziness, right? It's just like this drama that that no longer makes a whole lot of sense, right? And not that it makes sense from a human level either. But anyway, food for thought. And I guess, to circle back around to this enlightenment thing, you know, as we consider enlightenment, we think that it's going to be sunshine and roses. And I think we've all heard going through the fire. And I think that the path of dissolving of our attachments is profoundly disorienting. And there is, on the other side of it, I believe, is this state of bliss. But with Eckhart Tolle, I think he spent something like 2 years, basically. I'm not sure, but 2 years on a bench, like just reveling at the miracle of existence, before he was able to really get back into functioning in the world. And I don't know if that's really true, but so Irma says, "Oh wow, I have enough with me figuring out being in the present. Not sure I'd like to have that power to move in time like that." Well, interesting, right? Because that is the essence of us being consciousness. Like that is the um, kind of the proof of us being consciousness and not really being the body that we believe ourselves to be. So as we become more and more aware, I believe I think, again, whenever I say believe, I really mean my hypothesis is, it's my a working hypothesis, is that we we expand ourselves as we move toward consciousness. We release our hold on on our ideas of how the world is, and then we become more present to the the maybe being able to even see the energy that's here as energy. Maybe we see human forms as these energy bodies. Maybe that's like the path to miracles, right? to transcendence of 4D perception. So, yeah, I think that's it for today. I hope that that I was going to say, I hope that your journey to enlightenment is gentle. I don't know if that's a good hope or not. I don't know that that's something to wish upon us. But I have been growing into these awarenesses over many years, and I don't consider myself enlightened by any stretch of the imagination. However, I'm finding myself more like I feel this gentle opening. And I don't know if it ends up that way. I don't know if all of a sudden there's going to be like this flash of lightning for us, and boom, we'll be in this other state, or if we'll end up sitting on a bench reveling at the world for 2 years, or who knows what it'll be. But we can allow ourselves to be exactly where we are when we know that we are spirit, and we can enjoy the experience of being here and being in the physical, and all the triumphs and tortures of it too. So with that, so much love to you all. I so appreciate sharing this time with you and exploring these questions of being and meaning. And so I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And again, I just feel so graced to have this time with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Much love.